All right, so happy Wednesday, everyone. My name is Ria Davis. I'm super excited to be moderating today's 1824 and Semicolon discussion around Black entrepreneurship and the topic of mental health. As I said, my name is Ria Davis. I'm a music and entertainment journalist. I also work in the publicity space as well. And we have an amazing, esteemed panel for you today as we're going to talk about the importance of mental health and your mental health journey in Black entrepreneurship. So at the end of this, we will have a Q&A discussion. So as this panel goes on, make sure you drop your any questions that you have in the Q&A function. The Q&A is should be to the right of your screen. So it's better to put it in the Q&A instead of the chat function. So I'd like to share a little bit about 1824. 1824 is Universal Music Group's creative solutions team focused on the connection of artists and brands directly to fans through storytelling and experiences. For those that may not know, the semicolon is used as a message of affirmation and solidarity against suicide, depression, addiction, and other mental health issues. This virtual stage is one that we want everyone to know is free of judgment. This is a safe space to share real experiences and provide tangible takeaways and resources to improve everyone's mental health. Mental health is so important. So I'm just really excited to share these resources and share these takeaways from our panelists. So I want to take a moment to introduce all the amazing panelists. So first up, we have artist Saint Bodhi. Saint Bodhi's music is eclectic and bold because it had to be. The Los Angeles singer and songwriter dives between expansive sounds and styles, aquatic R&B, dreamy rap, and funk, among other genres, as a way of conveying the complexity of her history and emotions. Her 2020 debut, Mad World, dug through traumatic memories of a tough childhood and it toasts to the hard-won success of her recent years. On her 2021 Vibrant project titled Antisocial, she continues to enjoy the blessings of her rise, preserving a peace that took decades to attain by turning up and looking inward. Our next panelist is Yolo Akili Robinson. Yolo is an award-winning writer, healing justice worker, yogi, and the founder and executive director of BEAM, the Black Emotional and Mental Health Collective. Yolo has worked primarily in three areas: batterers, intervention, family counseling with Black men and boys, HIV/AIDS, and healing justice and wellness. In 2018, Yolo was awarded the prestigious Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Health Equity Award for his work. He was also featured at the 2020 BET Awards as an powerful spotlight, highlighting his work facilitating the vision of BEAM. He is the author of the social justice themed affirmation book, Dear Universe, Letters of Affirmation and Empowerment for All of Us. Our next panelist is Blake Van Putten. Blake is the founder and designer of CISE. Originally from LA, Blake began producing and designing clothes in 2010. After receiving his BBA in supply chain management, Blake worked in New York as a senior project manager for financial institution groups. As an experienced business owner, Blake has owned and operated 4 businesses. He recently quit his position and 6-figure salary to pursue CISE full-time. CISE is an LA-based clothing line with a simple idea: stronger threads for a stronger community. Blake started CISE with the goal of creating apparel that gives a voice to those in society who are typically ignored. The apparel created is purposely crafted to be both socially impactful and fashion-forward. CISE has committed to donating to organizations who are committed to advancing minority and disadvantaged groups within society. As the company grows, the ultimate goal is to become a springboard for Black creatives and the Black dollar. CISE is committed to making a difference, one purchase at a time. So excited to talk to you all today. So let's just jump right into some questions. Let's just get right into it. So for everyone, we'll start with Yolo. Yolo, what is mental well-being and how would you define the term?
All right, the easy questions, not really. To start us off. First, let me just say I'm excited to be here and in conversation with 2 people I have a lot of respect for, 3 people I have a lot of respect for, and thank you so much to everyone for the platform. Couple of pieces. So when we talk about mental well-being or mental health, which is the common way we talk about, use it, common term used, I think it's important to kind of ground it in a few things. One, it's important to understand that mental health is not equate the same thing as mental illness, right? A lot of times we think of mental health, people be like, I ain't got no mental health. It's like, well, mental health is a spectrum of experience that we all exist on, that can one day fluctuate and one day be in a very place where we feel really grounded and centered, and then in a place where we don't feel very grounded and centered, right? Regardless of whether we have a formal diagnosis or not, we all have mental health and we exist on that spectrum and move through it throughout the course of our experiences in our lives and days, right? So that's really important to name there too. Another piece I would like to offer is that mental health is about a relationship to our own psychological and emotional well-being, right? So if I'm in relationship to my emotions, to my psychological well-being, I'm taking care of myself, I'm engaging in a practice to kind of see and know what's present for me, right? When I'm not in relationship, I'm in denial, I'm often like denigrating or dismissing the ways in which my emotional and psychological self might be showing up, right? And so thinking about it as a relationship. The last piece I think is really important as we talk about well-being and healing is that I think it's so important when we talk about healing as a term or well-being is understanding that it is an ongoing journey. And it's about building a relationship to our emotional and psychological selves that fosters interdependence, connection, compassion, and joy, right? It's about that building that relationship and being on that journey throughout the course of our lives, because we never are fully healed, right? That's not how life works. We have to constantly grow and evolve and change. And so I think those are some pieces I would like to offer to ground the conversation in terms of how we talk about mental health and how we talk about healing and well-being.
So what does well-being mean to you, Saint, Bodhi, and Blake?
Well-being to me would just be taking the time out to just really take care of yourself and making those decisions of getting rid of those toxic people in your life, or taking that bubble bath, or if you're a spiritual person, taking those spiritual baths, using your crystals, and really just I like to call it shadow working with myself. So what I do a lot is how could I did that situation different, and how did I lead myself up to that bad situation that like I could avoid next time. And I think that's been my healing process, is like identifying instead of blaming, and figuring out how to fix myself within to be able to move forward to be a better person.
I think that I completely agree. I think your mental well-being is how you're able to cope and how you're able to find balance when nothing's happening. Where I think that when the pandemic started, a lot of people have been forced to spend a lot of time to themselves. And I know that I've always been a person that's been on go, whether I was working in New York and just being in such a huge city and moving around and trying to go from place to place, or after work going to a happy hour, just finding peace and then transitioning back to Los Angeles. I was always on go. But when the pandemic hit and there was mandatory stay-at-home policy, I'm forced to be in my house, and I'm forced to be in these spaces where I'm just getting in my head and just really figuring out like how I'm okay with the thoughts that are in my head and where I am and how I can make sure I can balance and find myself in a place that I like to be. So being very cognizant of that, and then finding out what you enjoy doing, so that way your vibration will constantly grow. You'll constantly be elevated instead of just at a stagnant point.
So Blake's answer kind of helped us segue to our next question. So how does everyone think the pandemic impacted everyone's mental well-being?
I think it
And how did it
definitely
impact you?
Yeah, it was a lot of soul searching. I think that obviously figuring out how you can just balance your finances, and then just worrying about the family around you. There's just so many things that I'm always constantly worrying about. But figuring out different outlets of how to express myself, and just figuring out how I could give back to the community and be involved with it. It was something that just really was pivotal, because I realized that I didn't have the best control over my daily thoughts. I was always occupying myself, whether it was from working every day, whether it was just doing different types of activities. But I forced myself to put myself in a position that I would just be happy with my day-to-day life, where now I'm just very conscious and I wake up being okay and just being okay with being alone, and then spending that time and dedicating it towards other people around me and valuing when people give me their time as well.
Yolo?
Yeah, I think one thing, and it kind of speaks to what Blake is sharing, is that the pandemic kind of took away for a lot of us, has taken away a lot from a lot of us, some of the coping strategies we had. And some of the coping strategies might have been always on the go, like you said, always working, being social. And when we're using those things to cope as a way to kind of either not confront or deal with a variety of different things that were going on in our own internal emotional lives. And so then for the pandemic kind of stopping all of that and forcing us to be present, of course, we've seen across the country, increased anxiety, increased symptoms of depression, increased various different symptoms, right? Because there is something about that isolation can create for folks, in addition to like getting rid of coping strategies. It also can also leave us alone with ourself in ways that isn't helpful and useful for us, because we need community to kind of cultivate wellness, right? And so I think it's really important to name that the pandemic has had a big impact. Some people have been able to transform it and use it as an opportunity to get healing and kind of connection with themselves. And some of us have also experienced our mental health deteriorate in the context of the isolation. Some people don't have access to the community or the resources they need. And so it's really shined a light on the failures of our public health infrastructure, on the need for us to have more resources and economic sustainability for all of our communities. It's definitely been a big issue.
Anybody?
For me, it just really helped me understand myself and face myself. I was one of those people who was always in the studio. I'm always trying to meet a producer, or not at home till like 7 o'clock in the morning. And if I finally took the time to sit down, I'm like, all right, what's wrong with you, girl? What are you running away from? Why are you using all this work, and why haven't you paid attention to yourself? And it really, it's helped me grow so much. And it's actually strengthened my relationships with my friends and family, because I didn't realize I was running away from those relationships as well, and covering up those relationships with work instead of like dealing with, the past trauma with friends and family.
Bodhi, as Black entrepreneurs and artists, how do you manage it all between friends, family, work, mental health?
Healthy boundaries is something that I've learned lately, is the boundaries that even hurt, that you don't want to do. But with the mental health, I really just take time to really sit down with myself. And then therapy, I keep trying to get people to go to therapy. I mean, everyone doesn't want to go to therapy, but I think therapy is such a good thing. Like, go to therapy. Where I come from a really crazy background. And I, whether it was drinking or smoking or, dabbling in other things that I shouldn't have been dabbling in, I was just running. And now I found like a nice balance by just therapy, paying attention to myself, being healthy, and counseling,
Yeah, the level of respect you have for other people is the level of respect you need to keep for yourself. And I think a lot of times you spend so much effort making sure other people are okay that you often forget about yourself. But there's been moments where I've spent so much of my time just making sure other people around me are good, that my emotional battery was just so low. So taking time to just be very blunt about things, right? Like, if somebody that doesn't understand where I am on an emotional level, then they might not have my best interest. So you have to really be very blunt about it, where somebody will be doing something at a time, I just can't prioritize it. I'll say, like, that's not what I represent, and just really identifying what my purpose is and what I like to do. My friends and family, they know not to present certain things to me, because I just instantly will feel offended, even if you just present it to me. So and anybody who has, and I would just question, why is that something that you think that, one, I would be interested in, and two is, how can we figure out how to communicate so it does work for both of us in the future, so that it works. So I'm very like cutthroat when it has it. I'm a person that keeps my read receipts on. I just hit people with the read receipt, but I just do my thing. I just keep very concise boundaries, and I just communicate to people.
So I know Blake and St. Bodhi have touched on setting boundaries. Yolo, how do you set boundaries in your life?
Yeah. Well, I love that we brought boundaries in the conversation. It's definitely an ongoing practice, because I know for me, I grew up in a space where, and many of us grew up in spaces where we weren't taught that we had the right to boundaries. Whether it was our parents told us we didn't have the right to say no about, I don't want to hug or touch someone or do something. Whether we, in particular, I think about the experiences of many Black women who are kind of expected to do the emotional labor of everyone else and not told that it's okay to have boundaries. And all those things differ depending on what body size you are, your age, like your particular ethnic group, like whether you're Caribbean, whether you're, African, all these different pieces, right? And so I think that it's important when we talk about boundaries to understand that it takes internal work to get to the comfort level and also even have the safety to say no. we know that for many people, it's not always safe to say no in certain situations where violence becomes a possibility, right? So we have to think about a broader structural reality. But building up that capacity to value yourself in a world that tells us that we're not valuable, particularly as Black people, as Black women, think about Black, queer, and trans folks who are constantly told you don't have a right to know. Fighting for that no is critical, but it takes that internal work, like what Bodhi was lifting up. It takes that kind of like having a wellness practitioner, whether it's a therapist or someone else, helping you really be able to see what are the barriers to me honoring what my needs are. How do I play a role in contributing to the dynamics of my life that are not healthy for me? What are the strategies, what are the communication strategies that I need to learn that help me show up in dignity and respect for myself? What are the things that are activated within me when people say certain things? And how is that about me and not about them? Right? Like really doing that work is critical, and it takes time. And it also often involves someone else. Now, I tell people all the time, unfortunately, we don't live in a world where everyone has access to a therapist, right? Therapy is often wildly inexpensive and inaccessible, right? We even have very small percentage of Black therapists. And our network, all therapists are like booked up. They're like, we don't even have capacity for anymore. And so there are other strategies people can think of, like, and we as Black people have a lot of strategies for healing, right? So whether it's, journaling as a practice, which is a really powerful practice we encourage people to do to help them in their healing journey, whether it's reading books that kind of can teach you different things about your own legacy and history and family, or I'll just give you skills and tools to like process. There's peer support groups, which we hold a lot of spaces where it's just groups coming together and sharing what they're learning on their journey. A lot of faith, a lot of different practices. So it's important to understand that you can have a tool belt with many different things, and that if you can't get access to therapy, doesn't mean you can't stop working. You have to stop working on your mental health. It means finding other strategies that work for you.
So therapy can be extremely life-changing, and it's a great tool and a great resource to have there. So what is the importance of therapy, and what are some other healing practices? I know you just named some, but if you have any more to share, Yolo and Blake and St. Bodhi, if you want to jump into the importance of therapy, and what are some other healing practices for the Black community and for everybody?
Pets are cool. Help, even though they're invading my Zoom meetings. But animals are cool. You know what? It's a thing that I've been doing lately. I've been trying to understand the perspective of other people's problems. And I know that sounds like different, but I just had a run-in with a young man who was very egotistical and very he had a thing about him. And I was angry. I was like, how could you treat me like this? And then once I started digging into his background, I realized, oh wait, your parents didn't love you. Oh wait, this happened to you. And so what's been helping me like handle and deal with myself is understanding other people and having a sense of empathy. Mm-hmm. And it's been getting me far. It's actually been helping my relationships. And I'm like a spiritual person. I do like my crystal baths and my salt baths and my meditations and my prayers and my ancestor work. So everyone has their own way. So however you guys want to do it. 1 second. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important, right? Somebody in the chat mentioned grind culture, right? Grind culture is probably the worst thing ever that has become cool. It's just how many hours can you knock out getting work done? And like the harsh reality is, if you're really trying to bust out and grow a business and scale a business, you're really spending time just focused on that you really don't spend time in other avenues that you really should. Like I had such a huge issue prioritizing my mental health because I would only work, right? Like I was working by myself, for myself. All my friends around me, they all are consistently getting paid from their employers. And I'm just wondering if things are going to work. So, but I'm like grind mode, drink a coffee at 10 p.m. Like I'm really working, and that's not cool. Like I wake up tired and then I got to drink another coffee, like as soon as I wake up, to just get things back on it. So balancing it. And I noticed that I'm like, okay, well, if therapists are booked out 3 to 4 months, then maybe that I could get an appointment right now. I could get an appointment then, but until then, I'm just going to keep knocking out work, when I should have just been conscious and then figuring out different ways to balance it. So that way things are okay throughout that time, because you don't want to get to a point where you internalize everything and just eats you up, and then something happens to you. You want to be able to balance it. So before, I was just working by myself, and I'm so thankful for my team, because now we've been able to have people who are special in their areas that I'm not great at, but they're special in it, where it alleviates the amount of work I have to focus on that, which then gives me time to myself. So being able to do that, like I'll pay any amount for any experience in life, but I'll also pay any amount for my mental health and my mental sanity. Like that is just something I just don't compromise. And once I figured out that therapy is not the only thing, you can find therapy through other activities until you decide how you're going to go about getting therapy and getting professional treatment. And that could be reading, sports, activities, getting pets, plants, whatever you want to do. Like find out what your art is, because your art is in everything, and just go from there.
Love that. Yeah, I think the only piece I will add is it's so important to understand that think about holistic health. Our health is impacted by everything in our environment, in our world, right? Whether it's the racial injustice, whether it's, homophobia and transphobia, whether it's access to clean water and green foods, all these things impact our health and our well-being. And we have to, and if we really want to transform the health and well-being of this country, we have to actually grasp the root and begin to address those broader societal and structural issues. Yeah. I also want to lift up that, like, yes, there are so many different practices that help our mental health, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's Reiki, whether it's yoga and meditation, whether it's music and dance, like, there are a lot of drummers, ballet dancers, street dancers, all these different practices can really help alleviate stress and help us practice and connect with each other. Another piece I always want to lift up is peer support, right? So like we have groups of people across the country who are like, we can't afford therapy, but guess what? Me and 5 of my friends, we decided we were going to read this book about Black mental health and healing. And we meet together and we eat and we talk about how this relates to our lives, and we process experiences. And then we go on hikes together. And then sometimes we'll cook together. There's a variety of different practices you can take on. The crystal piece that Bodhi said, I am a big crystal person. Crystals can be a great strategy for healing. So it's important to just figure out, once again, what you need. Some people might need medication. Some people might need therapy and also yoga. Are you a faith tradition? Like, if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, that is a part of your healing as well. Every tool is critical. Every tool has its limitation too, right? So you have to really be mindful of that. Like, I know my apple cider vinegar might not be the tool for a different kind of crisis in my life, right? So you have to be really mindful about every tool. Just like Batman, I say, Batman has all the tools in his tool belt, but he knows that certain tools don't work. You ain't gonna throw a batarang at Superman. That ain't working. Like, you need something bigger, right? And so making sure that that whatever strategy is helpful for your wellness,
I love that. So how do we break the stigma around therapy in the Black community? I'm so proud of individuals such as Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, from Charlemagne the God to Shanti Das. All these people are using their platforms to bring more awareness to mental health and to erase and eradicate the stigma and to keep the conversation going. So I feel like this generation has really, really brought it to the forefront. It's talking about it. It's normalizing the conversation about it. How can we erase the stigma in the Black community around mental health? Because it's still a process. It's still an ongoing journey.
I would say what we're doing now. I still have my people in my family. If I tell them, I don't need that, I got it. I still have my older generation, but I feel like if we continue to do stuff like this and celebrities do continue to have these conversations, eventually it'll start registering with this new generation. So we're already starting it.
Yeah, the community is really the new way to go viral with things to become cool, right? Like, thanks to the community, we've been able to build and have amazing products for people in the world and then give back to different organizations. But the same thing is, right, like, just because we are a fashion brand does not mean that we can't talk about and have conversations like this. And when you start to go out of your specific focus or your specific industry to be omni-channel and omni-focused, so that way we have open discussions, then it's a daily topic of conversation, right? That you see Naomi Osaka, like, she's being an advocate, and that's the conversations we have. Like, she's an amazing tennis player. Like, everything what she does in her sport is really great, but that topic of conversation is now something that we have, especially with Kaepernick. Same thing with Kaepernick. He's amazing at what he does, but that conversation opens up. And because people are watching to see what you do, they also are watching to hear, they're looking to hear what you say, because people will internalize it and they will either digest it in a way to act upon it in a good or bad light. But those conversations and continuously having that with good intention, that's how we're going to continue to break the stigma. And that's how we're going to continue to grow and give back. And it just takes one opportunity to change somebody's life. And it might just be yourself.
Wow. I love everything everyone shared. I want to, there's one piece that Bodhi shared that I think is really important when I think about breaking stigma. And Bodhi was talking about empathy and understanding, right? Cultivating that for folks. I think it's important for us as Black people to know, to understand the history of the extreme stress we have experienced in this country, and that the strategies that have only been available to us have been to repress it and to push it down because it has not been safe or there's been any avenue for us to express it. Whether we talk about the history of slavery, of Jim Crow, of the Reconstruction era, of the ongoing racial violence that we've experienced as a country, our generations that ahead of us, our forefathers, our grandparents, our parents before them, the strategy that they often had accessible to them was just like, you got to keep pushing, right? And so disrupting that, saying that, Mom, you don't have to just keep pushing. You can actually talk to me. It's going to take time to kind of feel comfortable in those spaces. It's going to take time to unlearn those behavior strategies or those coping strategies that for many of our communities have been denial, neglect, repression, and our shame, right? And so we have to be patient with ourselves. We have to embody and live the answer ourselves, not shame our folks for not doing the way we think they should be, but really living our truth and allowing them to see there's another way. And I think that's one of the ways that we begin to eradicate stigma. And also by having these conversations, just like, again, like once, and not just the conversations broadly, but really getting specific about, we have a history of, the ways in which substance use impacts mental health in our communities, the ways in which people have been, the ways in which, we talk about HIV, the ways in which trans and queer folks have been thrown away by families. All these different ways contribute to mental health. And so we have to get courageous. We have to get honest. We have to begin to see sometimes when we find ourselves in a space where it feels uncomfortable for us, we have to ask ourselves, what is it within me that makes me uncomfortable with this? And what does that say about where I am in my journey and what I need to unlearn that this toxic system has taught me, right? So it's all of us have roles to play in our healing collectively.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So we've heard a couple of things sprinkled in about self-care, but I want to hear some more about your self-care routines. So just give me a day in the life of self-care from each of you. The pandemic made me take self-care to the max.
I think I am really detailed about everything right now. Like, I'm wrenching my my face brushes. I'm cleaning things underneath my car. I'm reading books. I'm, like I said, doing my shadow work. I'm trying to figure out, not self-blaming, but I'm like, how do I not get in those particular situations anymore? And I've become like an activist. Like, I'm trying to build a support group for mental health. I definitely want to build, like, how we had the Black Panthers. Everyone remember we used to have Black Panthers. I want to build a safe space for when, like, Onika, when she backed out of the Olympics because of her mental health, we should have groups that just support that. You know what I mean? Like, this is okay. It's okay. Stop bashing her. And to teach people how to maneuver in this industry. Because a lot of these, just outside of personal mental health, a lot of the people in the industry, they're not taught how to maneuver around some of these people that are very sharky. You know what I mean? And that do try to destroy you, or are homophobic, or are against Black women, or like, we need to figure out how to teach people how to maneuver, get across, and still keep their sanity. And that's like stuff I've been working on for my mental health. It's like, all right, how do I just, you have no power over me. I'm good,
I'm trying to figure it out, but I learned that I do it one step at a time, right? Like the first one I'm trying to do is skincare. I just, at first, when I was trying to figure everything out, I was trying to wake up early, wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, have a well-balanced breakfast, work out, meditate, call all my loved ones, make breakfast, and it was just too much. So I'm content, like, learning that my self-care is just one piece at a time. Yeah. Like, maybe I'll read like one chapter in a book. Maybe I'll like just do a whole like night where I just, like, I don't know, like read a book, light a candle, watch TV, like something like that. Is just like one piece at a time, because I'm like the person that when I'm drilled into something, I go super hard. And like, you can't really, it's not synonymous to go super hardcore and try to relax at the same time. So like now it's like you're over here mad washing your face. It's just like now you're stressing out your face because you just did too much to it. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just really like one piece at a time, one take, Blake. I just really am focused on it. And then once we figure that out, then we get to the next step, because I've tried doing all that. But when you just get better, then you have conversations where I could go to Bodhi and be like, hey, like, I'm trying to read a good book now, and she's done read every book in the world. I can probably get a good recommendation from her at that piece. So like when time comes, that's how I find like my balance. And that's what's been working for me so far.
I love that, Blake. Like, I think sometimes the culture can the grind culture, we'll take grind culture to self-care. Like, I'm grinding on my self-care. It's like, wait up, that's actually not how that's supposed to work, homie. Like, it's kind of counterintuitive. And I definitely have been there. I think that like one of the biggest questions I ask myself every day is, what is my body, heart, and spirit telling me that I need right now to feel centered? What is that? And that looks different every day. Some days it's like, you need to get some chicken wings and some cornbread and greens. I'm like, bet that's gonna make me feel centered. Like, you know what I mean? Like some days that I need to yoga, some days that means I need to meditate, some days that means I need to be in community or I need therapy. It's a variety of different things, but just starting that day with asking yourself, what is my body, my heart, and spirit telling me I need to feel centered and grounded? And starting there.
And then with self-care, practices such as self-care, I feel like you feel better, so you perform better in everywhere else in your life. And that's what people don't realize. Like, because grind culture, like you're running yourself raggedy and then you end up on autopilot. But if you actually find balance and take that time out for yourself, then everything else gets aligned. Pretty much. So I want to see, what are some resources for mental health that you guys can share? I know there are things like therapy for Black girls. What are some resources, some websites, any resources, period, that you guys could shout out today that could help people on their mental health journey?
I have one, but I can't cuss on here, right?
I can't confirm or deny.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
There's these 2 books that I've been reading. I like to read books, and I game and stuff. So I like to play video games to kind of get my mind to stop moving so fast. But it's this You Are a Bad A and The Power of Now. And what was the other book? Those are 2 books. You Are a Bad and then The Power of Now. And then The Art of Not Giving Up. I've been reading those and it's been helpful.
Those are great. Those books got me into reading again.
You read them?
Yeah, I read all of those. Eckhart Tolle for The Power of Now. Those are great books. Yeah. As far as other resources, it's just I like journaling a lot, but my journaling is not like the really structured one. Like I have like an iPad and I do something that's called like Bujo. It's like bullet journaling. So I have all the bullets on it and it's just an open canvas. So I can write stuff down, like my notes and all that. And like I can draw, I can put designs together. I set everything up where it's like an art studio in my house where I have little canvases. I can do a paint and sip. Like I can do whatever I need to do. Like those are just my resources. My resources are just internally, like just being able to balance myself holistically and then just seeking out different resources. I know that there's tons of great opportunities in Beam that I learned about recently, and just like starting to just be part of just figuring out what I like to do, and then also figuring out what other people do, because when you start to hear what other people do and start to implement it, maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't, and just continuously just on the quest to learn what others do and just try to be better.
Yeah, I love all the answers. Yep. Of course, I'm going to send the folks to our website as an opportunity for some resources. It's www.beam.community. People often try to add a .com, but actually it's .community, and that's intentional. And so on our website, we have toolkits, which are everything from journal prompts, if you want to, like if you're a journaler. We also have a lot of frameworks for people who want to have difficult conversations, tools to understand a variety of different mental conditions and how to support our folks. We have on that website, as well as some of our resources that we give out. Like we have our Black Parent Support Fund, where we give economic resources to Black parents who are living with mental conditions or supporting children living with mental conditions. So I definitely recommend you check it out, along with all of our events and videos and conferences that we have virtually, as well as giveaways in person. Beam.community. On that website, you'll also find a connection to other hotlines and warm lines you can call whenever you need crisis support, or just even to someone, or even need information about how to support someone who might be in crisis. You can find that on our website. If you're looking for information about how to find a therapist, we have a directory as well as several other directories. So definitely check out beam.community for information to kind of help you on your wellness journey.
I'm checking out Beam.community. I'm part of I need all that energy.
So it's dope. The toolkit that wasn't mentioned is like they do a great job with showing pictures of the licensed professionals and those that are in the community that are far. I know that when I was trying to find a therapist, the first person I looked for, I tried to find a Black person, and just like going through there, there's not really like photos that showcase, like you'd have to go and like reverse Google image search somebody. It's a lot. So I think that the toolkit that you're doing is great. I'm definitely like invested in it. So it's great.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we want to make sure everyone on our directory, the Black Virtual Wellness is Black. So everybody's Black, luckily, but we did make sure those pictures are on there, and I appreciate that you found it useful. That's great.
All right, so let's go. So Naya says, what's the best way for her to ground herself? She said, I've tried numerous techniques, but it's been hard to find what works best for herself.
I feel like Yolo has this answer.
Actually, I don't have the answer for that. I think that it's a journey to figure out what's the best way to ground ourselves. And what works for you might work very differently from what works for me, right? So like, for example, I do like a grounding meditation that kind of makes me do a body scan where I just kind of like sit and take a moment to pause to kind of pay attention to my body and my breathing. But that might not be what works for you, right? Like, so it's really a journey of figuring out what works. And even what works at one point might not work anymore. Like we've all had that experience where we just like, oh, hiking makes me feel grounded. You'd be like, girl, I ain't going up no more mountains. I'm tired of that. Like, you have to figure out a different strategy. So it really is a journey. I would encourage you to kind of like take it, the insight that so many people here in the chat have shared, and just try different things and feel what feels good. And then use that as long as it feels good. And when you need something else, cultivate other strategies too. But there's definitely no one size fits all for mental health and wellness. It's very unique.
How do you prioritize and honor the boundaries you have set in your life?
If you said it, you got to respect it. Anything you put out that you tell people you can or can't do, you should honor that as like part of your word. And I think that when you set those boundaries up and say because when you start to not honor them, you take away from yourself, right? Whether that's just even like your level of accountability, whether it's just your energy and what you put out into the world. If you say, I can't be here because I have work, and then you just show up there, then now you know that even though you could have balanced both of it, it still takes back from it. And then also it gives people leeway of, because people will take notes and say, okay, well, they're not really serious about something, but you have to be very serious about it. And if you're not real with yourself, then your other people aren't going to really like take it the same way. So be real with yourself and understand what that even means on what it is, and then constantly reevaluate it, because like mentioned before, is like things change. You might wake up one day and all that is out the window. But if you don't reevaluate that, you wouldn't know until the next time you're faced with that same battle.
I'm glad somebody asked this. How do you create healthy boundaries, especially with family members? We got to talk about family members, because sometimes people don't deal with it because they're like, well, that's family. But, family can be family.
I usually do a firm no. Like, and sometimes you do have to remind them, like, no means no. No, you cannot do that. No, you cannot head up my money. No, you cannot. You know what I mean? It's a firm no. And then I've had to turn my back a little bit, like sometimes I've had to give that nice cold shoulder and then give it some time. All right, have you understood that this is my personal space and this isn't your personal space? And then usually they kind of, it's like, this is the worst analogy. It's like when you get a new puppy, it's just like, stop, please. And that's kind of how I've learned how to make personal boundaries with my family, so you don't get taken advantage of.
It's hard to explain to something. Like, my mom is my best friend. So there's certain things I tell her, she's like, I'm not listening to you, like, at all. Like, it does not matter. So there'll be times when like she got a new puppy and I would just like try to run errands that are like would help out the business. And she'd try to bring the puppy around. I'm like, you can't bring this puppy around. She's like, I'm just not gonna listen to you. So there's just certain things that's like not really a big deal. That's just like not the end of the world. And like your friendships come first, right? Like my relationship with my mom is very strong. It's always going to be there. So what I've learned is that in instances where if it doesn't hurt you, it doesn't really hurt you. Like it doesn't hurt other people. And you might just you might feel a type of way about it. But if there's a way to express it in a meaningful way, so you guys can come to terms with it, where it's like you bring them to the side and say, hey, like I have a client meeting, like you can't bring your puppy around because they have a dog allergy. That's different. Right. And then now she'll say, okay, I understand that. But before, if it's like you do things that oftentimes people think that people will make boundaries to penalize other people. And I want to make sure that like having those relationships with my friends is like, they understand why I said that. And if they don't really like align with it, have that conversation one off, not when you're mad with them. So you don't say anything that you don't mean, but just really like explain it. So that way it's like, okay, well, then I found out that maybe they need that because it's emotional support, or maybe that's something that I just overlooked because I feel the type of way of it, because other people have boundaries just like you.
Someone asked, how did you all become comfortable discussing mental health within your friendships and on platforms like this?
This is still my therapy. I would say that this discussion and this just even with my music career, talking about the things I talk about music, this is all a form of, this is my journaling. And then I'm learning so much from you guys. You know what I mean? Like this is helping me out. So it's comfortable because it's my way of expressing.
Yeah, and I think that another important piece is that we won't always be comfortable having these conversations, that we have to learn how to lean into the discomfort and be present in the discomfort in a way that allows us to grow and listen. Because sometimes if we always are seeking comfort, it's through the discomfort that we grow. It's through the discomfort that we hear the difficult things about how we've been showing up. And we're like, we don't want to hear that, but that's what we need to hear to be able to grow, right? And so as opposed to running away from that, sitting in that, feeling that in our bodies, like, you know, I feel uncomfortable in my stomach when you say these things, but maybe I need to sit and listen and figure out what that's about for me. Why am I defending against this perspective you have? Is it because I don't want to hear it? Or is it because like there's a grain of truth in here that I'm not ready to hear? What's going on for me, right? So sometimes it's also leaning into the discomfort, which makes it capable of having these conversations, and knowing that discomfort does not mean dehumanization. That's a difference between discomfort and dehumanization. There's a difference between discomfort and disrespect. Finding strategies that we can enforce our boundaries, communicate our feelings, that don't attack and belittle people, and that also make a distinction between their behaviors, ideas, and choices, and who the core of who someone is, right? I am not my behaviors, my ideas, and choices, but I am responsible for how they show up in the world. I might need to learn a new behavior. I might need to make different choices. I might need to get different ideas, but the core of who I am is not the problem. The core of who I am as spirit, as a human being, as a person, it's those external things I need to work on, you know? So I think that's the pieces.
Always, you suck my heart right out.
I've also learned that I feel like transparency can heal, your transparency can heal others. Yes. And then especially when I mentor youth, I just try to tell people, I know it's easier said than done, but I just try to encourage people not to care what other people think, and your truth will liberate you and heal someone else. I just have never cared. So, so I try to get young people like not to, because it affects people from all ages, like just especially with social media, just not to weigh in and factor in the opinions of others, and just, you know, just fight through and go through your journey. And then like you literally, sometimes people share things on social media and it literally provides a resource or makes people feel comfortable and strong and brave, or just informed about something new. So
one thing, when you say that, one thing, as you said, the thing, there's a quote that I love. It's my favorite quote that actually is what you just said. It's from Adrienne Rich. She's a really well-known poet. And she says talking about women, but I think it equates for everyone. She says, when a woman tells herself the truth, she creates the possibility for more truth around her. And I think about that all the time. When I tell myself the truth, I create space for more truth around me in the relationships and in the world around me. Just wanted to name that as you said that, because I was like, that's it, what you just said.
Yes, yes, absolutely. How do you all think we can educate older relatives to reduce implicit bias and negative assumptions about mental health and mental illness? This is important. Yeah, this is important.
This is a huge one. Go ahead, Bodhi. Go ahead.
No, I don't have an answer for that one.
I was giving it away. I was like, somebody. Okay. No, in our work, we work with a lot of communities across generations, and once again, I think it's so important to hold that, the ways in which we're having conversations around mental health, a lot of generations prior to us were not having that kind of conversation around mental health. There were still discussions around mental health. We were calling it something different, right? We still would say so-and-so is touched, so-and-so's in a mood. We were having conversations about mental health, but the way we're doing it now is very different. And for many folks, there is going to be a resistance. There is going to be discomfort. There's going to be pain, and also fear of what might be opened if I open that valve, because we've been repressing and pushing back so much. So we need to be gentle. We need to have boundaries with ourselves and with them. We need to be gentle. We need to be affirming. We need to live the answer. That means that we need to embody our practice and let them see how we are growing from our mental health journey. Because I can tell you, like, even in my own family, there's been moments where I've been like, what? And I was really intentional about not going back to my family and shaming them for who they need to be or what I thought they need to be. But so much is going back and saying, hey, let me tell you what I'm learning, and letting them figure out what they want to do with that. You know, I've had funny moments where one day I was on the phone with my dad. My dad was like, you know what? I was watching something you did. And I was like, maybe I need to go to therapy. And then my mother in the background yells like, Lord, it's the last days. Lord, it's the last days. He go to therapy. You know, like, it's those small things that, like, you know, opened up segues for them to kind of explore things on their own terms, right? So patience, boundaries, understanding the context. Our parents grew up in a different time. You know, and like, we have to understand that there's things we don't even understand about what they had to navigate. And so I think it's really important to hold that.
And thank you, Autumn Brown and Heaven Only, for those questions. Jakarta Vanderbush would like to know, what books would you recommend that highlight Black mental health?
I know I have a couple. I recommend, so there's a book called The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love. It's by Bell Hooks. It's a really good book that explores the ways in which Black men in this country are often socialized to emotionally repress and deny their feelings, and how that contributes to depression, anxiety, but also stunted relationships in the community. There's a really great book called My Grandmother's Hand by Resmaa Menakem, My Grandmother's Hands, where Resmaa talks about the history of you know, how mental health shows up in a variety of different ways in our communities. Post-traumatic slave syndrome is a really great book to kind of explore around the ways in which slavery and the legacy of racism continues to impact our wellness. I also love a lot of Iyanla Vanzant's book. The Spirit of a Man is a great book. One Day My Soul Just Opened Up is a great book. So those are some books I would drop. I tend to read a lot of nerd heavy books. So I don't want to get like super diagnostic books, but those are some of the books I think that are really great conversation starters. And I'll also have to share that there's an anthology called You Are Your Best Thing on Black people, healing, and vulnerability that I'm a part of. It's edited by Dr. Brene Brown and Tarana Burke. And it's a collection of Black folks writing about essays about their healing journeys that I really recommend checking people out. We were a New York Times bestseller, so it's pretty good. So check it out. You Are Your Best Thing is one option too.
Love that. Liana would like to know, if you could give your younger self any piece of advice, what would it be?
I would definitely tell myself that, like, you don't have to, what are you in a rush for? Everything that you're in a rush for is going to come at the pace that it wants to come at. So you can work as hard as you want, but if it's not time, you can't force time to really come. And when you're so hard on yourself in hopes that you'll get that instant satisfaction, then by the time you get it, it's not even worth it to you. So just really like, take your time with things. And then when you work with intention and really map out what you want, then that's when you have those moments where you won't only be happy with it, but the people around you would like to celebrate with you. So just take your time and work with good intention.
Yolo.
I'm going next. Okay, I'm gonna get to Bodhi, but I think one thing I would tell myself is that your gut, the feelings that you have in your gut, when something feels awry, when something feels amiss, those feelings and that intuition is often accurate. Now, distinguish between the feeling and the story you might tell yourself about that feeling. Those are two different things. So 100% of the time when I feel like something don't feel right, it's something. Now, is it the story that I tell myself? Well, you know what don't feel right? It's because Bodhi out here to get me and Blake. Now, the story might not be accurate. The story, the thing that I might be clocking is, oh, you know, Bodhi and Blake planning a secret party for Yolo, but I'm creating a whole story in my head. There's something else. They out to get me and they trying to take my career, right? So making a distinction and knowing that, like, I would tell myself, your feelings are always accurate. Energy does not lie, but be mindful of the stories you might tell yourself about that energy and that feeling, because sometimes those stories are not accurate and not representative of the full truth.
Yes.
Same, Bodhi.
I would tell myself to calm down. calm down. Everything's going to be okay. I know it's a lot going on, but you're going to be okay. And I don't know, I grew up so fast. I probably would just tell myself to calm down and slow down, honestly. And because it was bad. So I couldn't, everything was bad. I would just tell myself to calm down. You know, like that's a whole nother world within itself.
Ruby Barnes would like to know, being as though a lot of the Black community holds a lot of mental health issues silent, what was something that made one of you want to start this journey?
Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
Being as though a lot of the Black community holds a lot of mental health issues silent, what was something that made one of you want to start this journey?
And I have a 12-year-old, and my 12-year-old right now is dealing with his sexual identity. And I try to make a very safe space for him. I let him know, look, mom has been through some crazy stuff. And, you know, I dealt with my sexual identity, and I let him, I'm just very honest and transparent. And I just don't want him or his generation, like the fact that my son, you know, is you know, pansexual. That's why I like to call him pansexual. That's what he identifies as. And with him being pansexual, it's okay. Don't let these people bully you. You can do whatever you want to do. Your head needs to be on the right space, you know? So like, that's why I take this so seriously, because if my next seed is not going to know this, if I don't put myself out there and let people know that this is serious. He's already having his own identity crises with being like mixed raced. He's like, mommy, am I Black or white? I'm like, you are you. You know what I mean? Like, you're a human, it's fine.
I just felt a lot of people weren't going through the same thing that I was going through. I felt like people are either doing really well or they're not. And there were some times where I would wake up feeling okay, and I didn't know how to necessarily navigate it, that I started to publicly share things that were happening, right? Where there's such a pride, especially within the Black community, where you want to be the strong person that's really not going through things. And like, Black people don't really share like their personal stories, because you don't want people to talk ill of you. You don't want people to think things and have premeditated opinions. That it's to the point, it's like everybody here's strong, but Blake. So then I started to just explain and like say certain things. It's like, hey, like I've been working really hard. I'm really tired. Like there was a post when I actually posted, I'm like, it's 1 a.m. I'm like, I'm up working and I just don't feel good. And a lot of people messaged me like, hey, like I resonate with this. This is something that is important to me as well, that it built a community. So I started to have friends come in and tell me that they share the same type of thoughts that I had, and they have the same type of moments, and they express themselves in the same way. So because of that, I've been able to build a community. And I think that because I've had the fortune of continuing to grow and develop as a person, I wanted to express that with my art. So that to me was creating clothes, creating and giving back to the community, and doing things for other people around me. So that was one of the things that we wanted to have, is we wanted to have collections that impact and inspire others around us. And if it's not directly in an avenue that we specifically cover, being in environments and being around people that are, so that way I always want to have a point of reference. Like if somebody wakes up and says, hey, do you know somebody that could do this? I'll be like, oh yeah, call Bodhi. You know, I want to be like, call this person and be able to do that. I want to be that encyclopedia for help. So mental health is where it starts from, because if you're not right within, then you can't be right just holistically. And I just think it's super important.
Yeah, wow. So many powerful examples. I think what led me on my journey was when I had the opportunity to have experiences, whether through my education or just through amazing people that I met, to see that things could be different than how they were, that my community could feel different, that people could have more skills and tools to support each other differently and show up for each other in love. When I realized that, and I realized that a lot of these tools have been kept away from our community, or these strategies had not been focused on our community, that really led me to really work really hard to do whatever I can in my power to help us reimagine how we are in the world. You know, I grew up in a community where there was a lot of distress, where I watched, family members and relatives struggle with domestic violence, with substance use. And I watched people abandon them and ignore them, ignore the distress. And then when I learned that there could be other ways to show up, I was like, how do I make this more accessible to people? How do I make these resources, these tools, these avenues of being accessible? And that's what really drove me and drives me every day, because I do believe that sometimes we are, I think it's Adrienne Marie Brown who says, we are in a crisis of the imagination, where we have people who don't believe that something, a different world is possible. We have to invite ourselves to imagine bolder and bigger for our world, and for how it feels to be in our bodies, how it feels to be in relationship to each other, how it feels supporting people across the mental health spectrum. We can imagine better than what we've been given. And that's what really drives me.
Love that. Let's see. Anna JB wants to know, if and when someone seeks therapy, would you suggest them taking medication if prescribed? That's kind of a tough one to speak.
Yeah, I can take this one. So I think it's really important to name that two things. So medication is one thing that some of us will find useful in our tool belt. And so that is really important to name, that yeah, there are many of us who will need medication as a tool. However, there also, as we hold this, if at any time that you are prescribed a medication and you don't feel comfortable with the medication, if you feel like it's having an impact on your body or your spirit in ways that don't feel good, before you begin to just abandon that medication, I always invite people to get a second opinion, because therapists and medical professionals are humans. And sometimes we know, particularly when it relates to Black people, that they can often misdiagnose or not necessarily be very mindful of how they are dosing us with certain medications. And so it's important to listen to what your body says, to advocate for yourself. Sometimes the dosing is wrong. Sometimes it's the wrong medication. Sometimes medication might not be the strategy that a second opinion, another therapist or another psychiatrist might suggest for you. So it's really important to be an advocate for yourself. And know and remember that while a medical professional knows a lot about medicine, you are the expert of your body. And so if that medical professional is not listening to you and hearing you and partnering with you, because every medical professional needs to be a co-healer situation. They need to be healing with you. If they're not listening to you, you deserve and have the right to find another psychiatric therapist to support you and listen to you. I tell people all the time, just like with the barber, if you go to one bad barber and they cut your hair and mess it up, you don't stop going to barbers for the rest of your life. You go find you somebody who's gonna cut your hair and get it right. It might take you a couple of times. You gotta be like, nah, I'm lying back here, I'm not going back there. It might take a couple of times to figure out somebody, but you're not gonna give up having your hair done forever. Don't give up on your mental health journey. Don't give up on whatever tools that you need. Yes, there is a lot of nuances with it. Therapists and medical professionals are human. Get a second opinion. Listen and hear from other folks.
And the last question, well, we had two questions. We had a funny question. So I'm gonna answer Stacy's question because it speaks to self-care, because I love makeup. Stacy asked me about my lipstick color. It's MAC, feels so grand, and it's better than Ruby Woo. So ladies, it will change your life. And, but the last question for real is, I'm so sorry. I apologize for butchering your name. I'm gonna try. McGonaghy. I'm so sorry. Tell me in the chat how to pronounce it, please, so I can get it right. But she wants to know, he or she wants to know, any podcast recommendations for self-care?
Therapy for Black Girls, Dr. Joy Bradford is amazing. If you haven't listened to it already, I recommend Dr. Joy Bradford, Therapy for Black Girls. And regardless of your gender, I listen to it all the time. I'm clearly not a Black woman, but I'll be like, yep, that too, I'm learning. So.
For all of our panelists, could you leave everyone with an endearing word that speaks to mental health, or something they could do to carry out after today in their journey?
I would say everyone follow your intuition. And I would say it's okay to take the time out to really focus on your mental health and what you need to do to take care of yourself. And I love you.
Pour into yourself and pour into other people. There's plenty of pouring to go around.
I like that.
Yeah. You are your best thing. So take care of you. Take care of your heart, your mind, your spirit, and your body. You are your best thing.
I love it. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Big shout out to CISE 1824, Semicolon Sessions. So I am excited to continue to have conversations around this. So everyone have a great day.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.